Hey, I'm Mike. This is my brand new channel, and this is my new to me 2017 Mustang GT. Just picked this thing up. It's a brand new car for this new channel, and it is super rowdy. It's got a twin turbo kit, makes about 1,000 horsepower with the crank on E85, and I'm having a great time with this thing so far, and I think you guys are gonna be stoked on this. So let's hop in the car, take a ride back at the shop, throw it up on the lift, and see what we're working with, and then talk about some plans and goals with this thing. So let's hop in, go for a ride. So before I get into the details of this car, I need you to keep in mind that I actually need a name for this car. So if you have a good idea for a name for this thing, let me know in the comments below. And if I actually like the name that you come up with and I name the car after your name, I will send you a $100 gift card. So keep that in mind. If you got a name idea, drop it in the comments below. All right, let's take a peek at this new car. All right, so this is a 2017 Mustang GT with the Performance Pack. I'll go over more of that later. And it is technically a base model, but it's got a couple cool options that I really like. So this thing is pretty low mileage. It's got about 31,000 miles on it, and it is super clean. It's actually a little dirty right now because it's kind of wintry outside, but it's an overall clean car. And so I actually looked at this car about 2 months ago when I sold my last car, which was a C6 Corvette, and I really liked it, but I just didn't feel like the timing was right or something. I just didn't end up actually buying it. And on the last video that I posted on the Lost Co, I said that I would get a car channel started per your requests, and I would go and buy a car if I had some subscribers come over and follow along. And well, I had a bunch of subs, and I'm super thankful for that. And I went out and bought this car. I told you guys that I had a car in mind and that I was gonna go buy one, and I wasn't playing around, went and picked it up, so here we go. So if you're not familiar with Mustangs, this is technically an S550 body code. So this is the S550, which is basically the 2015 and newer, all the way up until the new model was released, which is now going to be the S650 for 2023 and newer. But then before this body style, there was the S197, and then before that, the New Edge, and then before that, the SN95, and then before that, the Fox body. And then before that, a bunch of other different models of Mustangs, but I really got into them in the Fox body and newer. And back when I was younger, I actually owned 2 different Fox body Mustangs. I think they were both 84s, and I'll try to put some pictures on the screen from really old cell phone memory cards. But those are pretty fun and pretty much just got me started on Ford. I also had a couple friends that were into Fords back when I was younger. One of my friends, Frank, had an S197 GT500, and then my really good friend Dave had a 2003 Cobra Terminator. That thing was super rad. It made like 500 wheel horsepower, and that was really my entrance into Mustangs making good power, was Frank and Dave. So thanks guys for getting into Fords at that time. And I've had a lot of cars over the years. I think I've had something around 30 cars, but I've always had a knack for Fords for some reason, even though I kind of had those Fox bodies years ago and then never had a Ford again. And about a year ago, I was really close to pulling the trigger on a similar S550 Mustang. Actually, I drove like 6 or 7 of them. And then for some reason, I just bought that C6 Corvette kind of on a whim. I don't really know why. I think I just got a good deal and just bought it. But unfortunately, I just didn't mesh well with that car. I think that'll be a whole different video on why I sold a Corvette and bought a Mustang. I didn't go with my gut feeling, and I didn't buy an S550 Mustang last year. And yeah, sold my C6, got this thing, and I'm super stoked. I really feel like I should have just bought this in the first place. All right, so this is a 2017 car, meaning that it has a Gen 2 Coyote motor. I'm sure you've heard of a Coyote motor before, but basically there are 3 generations. There's the first generation, which was 11 to 14, the second generation, 15 to 17, and then the third generation, which was 18 and up until the X650 comes out. That'll be probably Gen 4, I think. So the Gen 1 doesn't hold a ton of power. I think it's around 550, 600 to the wheels. On the stock bottom end is where you kind of start reaching the limits. And then the Gen 2 is when things start to get pretty badass. So the Gen 2, 15 to 17, has 11 to 1 compression ratio. And the cylinder walls are actually physically sleeved, which is great for boost. And these things love boost. The heads flow very well. And so you cram a bunch of air in there and it just makes wonders with it. The Coyotes definitely love boost, and that's one thing that I am stoked on for this platform. And then in a nutshell, the Gen 3s have higher compression, 12 to 1 compression, and they also have a plasma lined cylinder wall rather than physical sleeves. And they make excellent power because of that high compression, but there's this age-old debate on if the Gen 2 or the Gen 3 holds more power on the stock bottom end, or if they're better for boost or anything. And you can go back and forth either way, but I really like the Gen 2s, and so I kind of went with that. And also the fuel system is a little bit more simple. So this is just going to be port injection rather than port and direct injection like the Gen 3s. So it's just a more simple fuel system to work with. And I'm sure you already know, but this is a 5.0, so a 5-liter motor. And at first glance, this Gen 2 Coyote looks pretty dang stock under the hood, but once we throw this up on the lift, you will see that it is not stock. All right, let's do a quick rundown on the interior, which is one of the main things that I love about this S550 platform. It's just a really cool interior. It's just got this awesome cockpit feeling. It's got kind of like that double dash on both sides, and it just feels great. I love driving this thing. So I mentioned that this was a base model, and you can quickly tell a base from a premium by actually just looking at the center dash. So you see this dumb looking old, it looks like it's from like 1997 in a Mercedes that had like a phone in the car or something like that. It's a really dumb infotainment system, but luckily, one of the first things that I'm gonna do is actually swap that out with the one from the premium that's known as the Ford Sync 3. You'll have like Android and Apple CarPlay and all that stuff on there. A lot nicer, and I'll also do some sound system stuff because I like tunes. I like music, and so gotta have tunes while you're driving around. There's some other little things to the base, like you don't have super fancy like door sills, and the door panels are a little bit more basic, a couple less speakers, but I'm gonna upgrade all that stuff anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. This is the Performance Pack, which means that you have these extra gauges in the center. You've got vacuum and you've got oil pressure. The vacuum gauge is really not going to do anything because there's boost, and so it's going over 0 vacuum, but it still looks cool, and I really dig it on the inside. Like I said, this thing has some options, and the main option here is the Recaro seats. My Evo 10 had the factory Recaros, and I loved those, and so I was really looking for something with Recaros, and I really like cloth seats as well. I don't really like leather that much because it's like weird and hot and sticky in the summer and cold in the winter, and also you kind of slide around a little bit. Cloth holds you in a little bit better, and the only way to actually get the cloth Recaros is in the base model. And overall, I'm really happy with the actual packaging of this car. Performance-wise, the Performance Pack actually has Brembo front brake calipers, which stop awesome. They're really nice brakes. I love them already. And they also come with these nice Performance Pack wheels. I've got the rear ones over there that the previous owner threw in, because the rear wheels right now are these super sweet VMS drag pack wheels. These are 17-inch rims with the Nitto NT555 R2 drag radial tires, and these are in a 305 by 45 sizing. So 305 rear drag radial. These NT555 R2s are awesome drag radials, and it's pretty chilly outside, and I'm actually getting decent traction with the amount of power that this car is putting down. So it looks great, but I'm going to take these off here soon and put the stock Performance Pack wheels on, just because it's kind of winter outside and you don't need drag radials right now, and also I don't want to beat them up because they're super shiny. Look at these things. Jeez, woo. Other than the drag radials and those drag pack rims, you can't really tell there's anything done to this thing. I mean, look, this doesn't even have any spoiler on it from the factory, which I actually really like. It just looks super clean, and it kind of has that drag car look, so excited about that too. Here's another look at the stupid radio and center console of the base, but that'll be gone soon. But then we see this thing. This is a stick shifter, a manual transmission. So that is kind of something I wanted to talk about really quick too. So I did go with a stick shift, and before I actually bought a car, I was kind of considering going automatic because I kind of want to do mainly drag racing with this thing. And automatics are just way faster and more reliable on the drag trip when you're launching from a dig, especially on a prepped surface. But there was something about it, I don't know why, like maybe nostalgia purposes or something like that. I just really felt like it was the right thing to do to go with a stick shift car. It seems like these Coyote Mustangs with automatics are almost like too easy to go fast. They just have bolt-on kits and just go down the track really fast. And for some reason, I wanted a little bit of a struggle, so I went with a stick shift. And so that is the first main problem with this car, is that these MT82 transmissions that come in these are kind of garbage. All right, now let's get the car up on the lift and see what's underneath. Check this out. Before I show you the magic that's happening under the car, let's actually look at the power that this car made so that you have something to reference. And so this car made max power 655 wheel horsepower and 632 wheel torque on pump gas. And then on E85, 834 wheel horsepower and 788 wheel torque. So 830 to 850-ish wheel horsepower is probably around 1,000 at the crank. Honestly, I don't really care about crank numbers ever, just wheel horsepower, wheel torque numbers, and actual time slips from the drag strip. But for YouTube titling purposes, it's probably right around 1,000 horsepower at the crank. And these are on pretty low boost numbers, so if we have a built bottom end in the future, we can go bigger. But for now, let's check out what's actually under the car. All right, so this is actually my first time under the car with you guys right now. So we're gonna kind of learn together. But what you see right here is a pair of twin turbos. So these are from a company called Hellhorse Performance, and this is what's known as a mid mount, or some places call it a low mount. But basically, yeah, the turbos are not on top; they are under the car, as you can see. So we got the engine oil pan right there, and then we have two turbos around that. And then we got the transmission right here. So it all fits nice and tight underneath that. So there are some pros and cons of the setup. We'll talk about the cons first, is that mainly it's underneath the car. I live in the Pacific Northwest. It does rain pretty often, so you can't really drive these things in a nice downpour at all. And you're gonna wanna also avoid going through any standing water, because you don't want to suck up water in your turbos. So filters right there, and that is where you technically have access to get water in there. But I don't plan on driving this thing when it's really wet outside or anything like that. So it really should not be a big deal at all. All right, now onto the pros. So when you have a setup like this, it actually puts the weight lower on the car, so you have a lower center of gravity. With turbos and weight up top, it's technically gonna affect your handling a little bit. Even though this is not a car meant specifically for handling well, it is still a plus, and so a lot of people use turbo styles like this for road course stuff and things like that because of that low center of gravity and low center of mass. Another cool thing about these turbos is that they're not oil fed and they don't have coolant going to them, so there's no lines that you have to tap into anything on the engine. A common way to install turbos is to actually have to tap into the oil pan, basically tap a hole, and then have an oil line go to each of the turbos, or to one turbo if it's single. And that just adds to another layer of complications and things to be installed and things to potentially go wrong. And so these are actually grease-fed turbos. So there's basically, as you can see, there's a little grease nipple right here, and you just basically swap out the grease every time you change the oil, 3,000 to 4,000 miles. And so yeah, you just pack that full of grease. And there's also no coolant going through these to keep them cool or anything like that. They're actually air-cooled turbos as well, so that is pretty rad. As you can see, there's a wastegate on each of these things, and it is just an open wastegate. So all the air that bypasses the actual turbos is gonna just dump out right there and sound pretty cool. And then the actual outlet of the hot side of the turbo goes right into this exhaust, and this exhaust is by Stainless Works. Pretty nice piece. It sounds really good. It's not super raspy or anything like that, and I am definitely digging the sound so far. Down here, you can also see these fuel lines. So this has a fuel system by a company called Fore, F-O-R-E. This is a return style, and so these are better for higher horsepower builds like this, because the gas can actually go to the engine and then also route back. So you have better control and management of the fuel pressure and the fuel delivery and all that stuff. So definitely needed for this type of build, so I'm stoked that the previous owner also did this. It's pretty cool to see how this turbo setup works. So the outlet on the cold side of the turbo basically goes up along this pipe here, and then into this gigantic brick of an intercooler. Holy crap. And there's actually two inlets from each side, from each turbo, just like that. And then the air gets cooled through this intercooler here, and then goes up and into the intake manifold of the engine. And the intake manifold on this is a ported Boss intake manifold. Super common for those going for high horsepower. The size of these turbos are 65/68s. They spool up pretty quick. I feel like this car builds boost around 2,500 RPM and then kind of takes off from there, and it feels like it freaking pulls like a freight train. And the boost hits super hard on this thing around 3,500 RPM and just pulls. I mean, it's cold outside. I'm getting absolutely no traction on this pump gas tune, and I'm gonna have to wait till spring to actually feel the full power of this thing, but it definitely pulls hard. It is super fun. I've find myself giggling every time I get into boost on this thing. It's so cool. I've had a bunch of turbos cars in the past, but mainly 4-cylinder all-wheel drive turbo cars, never V8 and turbo, but I've also had a bunch of V8 cars that are NA or supercharged, so never had V8 and turbo, so my two favorite things together, and so this thing has just been a blast to own, and I'm so excited to see what we can do with this thing. The previous owner also upgraded the oil pump gears and the crank sprocket, which are notorious for blowing up on these Coyotes at higher RPMs. If you have a Coyote engine and you're boosting it, especially a stick car that is more likely to miss a shift and bounce off the rev limiter, you gotta upgrade the oil pump gears and the crank sprocket because they are known to break, and that's obviously not good for your oiling system and the internals of your engine. That's an easy way to blow out a $10,000 motor. It's a multiple day procedure if you're doing it in your garage and you don't do it all the time. I'm really, really happy that I do not have to redo those, because you have to retime a dual overhead cam V8, which is just a big job, and I'm so stoked that I don't have to do that. one huge thing that I'm super excited for with this car is the mileage. It's got 31,000 miles or so on it, and it's the lowest mileage car I've ever had. Traditionally speaking, the Mike way of doing things is to buy a very high mileage car to save some money that has a ton of mods on it to save as much money as possible. And it doesn't always work out. You're always working on stuff consistently because you're fixing other people's problems, and also the car's just old, and every time you work on everything, stuff is covered in grease and oil, and you're finding weird leaks and just dealing with headaches. And I just wanted to do it different this time, so I got a low mileage car. And yes, it is modded quite a bit, and it is a stock engine car making a ton of power with twin turbos, but this was all installed at a shop called English Racing down in Portland. Great shop. They have the world's fastest Evo 10, and when I had my Evo 10, I had a bunch of work done there and it had it tuned. Great shop. So it was all done by real mechanics, and so I feel like I have a good foundation to start with. So the first thing that I actually have to do with this car is just straight up learn. So I've never had the S550 Mustang platform before, so I've got a lot of learning to do, just the ins and outs, the little quirks and things like that, as every car has, especially as you modify them. And there is a ton of information on these things on the internet. It is a very well-supported platform of a car, probably one of the best ones out there. There's so many people that have these because Ford made a zillion of them, tons of them on the road, and tons of them that have been modded to go fast. So I've just got to learn that basic stuff, but then also I have to learn stuff about this actual car right here. So I did not install any of these modifications. This was done by somebody else. And I definitely could have installed all of this, but I didn't. And so I just need to figure out how all this stuff works. Like, where does that vacuum line go? Does that boost controller need to be there? How come that fuel line is routed like that? Things like that. And then another thing that I have to do as well, I'll actually turn the camera around here, is I have to learn the actual control of the boost and the tunes. So it has a boost controller, focus right there, called the GFB G-Force 3, and really cool. I played around with it a little bit. There's a ton of features, but it's pretty in-depth, and you have so much power over the wastegates and boost control that is just insane. But I have some learning to do on actually how it works, because I don't want to press buttons and then mess something up and overboost on pump gas. And then that is the N gauge. This is a part that has unfortunately been discontinued, but fortunately it's already in this car. So all the car's tunes are on that. So pump gas tune, E85 tune, etc. All on that. I can switch the tune, and then I can also change the boost on the boost controller. Just got to figure out how that stuff works and make sure that I control the boost right, have the right tune, and things like that. So right now, just on the pump gas tune. I won't be playing around with that until spring, maybe putting some E85 in there and go full power. So we'll see. So what do I actually plan on doing with this car? Well, honestly, I think that this thing is going to be built for going fast in a straight line, primarily. I don't want to take away from the street handling and things like that, but it's not going to be a road course car. It's going to be, meant for going straight really fast. So growing up, I was really into drag racing, but I really couldn't afford a car to go very fast at all. Cars used to be like really slow, so my cars would always run. I think the fastest I ever ran at a drag strip back in the day was like a 13.5 with this 94 Camaro I had. The drag strip was like 2 hours away. You didn't want to risk breaking your stuff, and the fastest car that I ever actually had was another Fox body Mustang, but it blew up on the street, never took it to the drag strip. So I'm so happy that I have another Mustang here, kind of redeemed myself on that. I'm looking forward to getting some seat time and getting that driver mod back. And so what I plan on doing here is a lot of drag racing, prep services from a dig. I really love that stuff. And also quarter mile, of course. And I also want to do a bunch of roll racing. So last year I did some roll racing with the C6 Corvette, and that was really fun. I got my foot in the door on that type of event because I've never experienced that before. And so I'm really looking forward to trying that out with, a higher horsepower car like this Mustang. I think it's going to be super fun. I hope that I can line up with some fast GTRs and exotics, maybe Lambos and stuff like that. I don't even want to beat them. I don't even care if I beat them. I just want to kind of experience that and kind of get in with that crowd. So I think that'll be super fun. I'm really looking forward to that. And so in order to actually have this thing go fast down a drag strip with a prep surface, if you're not into drag racing, you need to know that when you are launching a car on a prep surface, sticky surface with sticky tires like slicks or even drag radials like this car has here, you like to break stuff. So I'm gonna have to prep this car for that. And when you break stuff, you usually break stuff in the drivetrain. So this differential is actually pretty strong. This is a Torsen 373 gear ratio, and a Torsen is, it's a little bit better for handling and putting down power out of corners, but people have great luck drag racing with these things. And it actually looks like I have the iron housing. So that is the stronger option, which is rad. One thing that is probably gonna break and have to go right away is the axles. I believe that these things are actually a hollow axle on the GTs, but the GT 350s are solid, but I'm honestly gonna probably end up getting something a lot burlier from a shop like DSS, which makes really burly drivetrain stuff for drag cars. Same thing with the drive shaft, probably gonna have to upgrade that. I think a lot of people put an aluminum drive shaft in there. I don't actually know where the failure comes from those, but it's just something that I see commonly. Besides that stuff, there's also a lot of bushings and things like that to replace in the actual rear IRS, the independent rear suspension system. So the subframe has a bunch of bushings, the toe links need to be upgraded, all sorts of stuff. That's kind of the most task heavy part of this car, is just getting the drivetrain to not only hold power, but also to be safe. Because when you have, 800 plus wheel horsepower, you need to actually have traction in order to be safe, because I don't think I have to tell anyone that it's unsafe to have zero traction from your rear wheels with a bunch of power. So that is going to be a bit of work. I'm either going to get a kit from a brand called BMR, or there's some other companies like Stita and things like that make some of these pieces. So just got to figure that out, replace all the mushy things that are from the factory in here. So drive shaft easy, axles easy, but we have one major problem with this car, and that is the transmission. So the Coyote engine that's actually creating the power up front is really strong. These things stock hold, 800 to 900 wheel horsepower, it seems like all day, as long as you have good fueling. And so this car's in that realm of a pretty safe number of horsepower from that stock bottom end. But these stock transmissions in the manual cars kind of suck. So this is a transmission called the Getrag MT82. It's made in China. It's not a very quality product. Not saying that Chinese products are all bad, but this one in particular is pretty glass. Some people break them with stock horsepower numbers. Some people somehow manage to keep these things running through like 900 wheel horsepower. I don't really know how. I guess they're just shifting slow, but I want to do some stuff like no lift to shift, where you don't lift your foot off the gas pedal in between shifts, and I want to get this thing going quick down the drag strip with the manual trans. So I'm probably going to swap that out for something common like the Tremec T56 Magnum. That's a common one, holds a lot of power. Or I can actually send this transmission to a shop on the East Coast called Calimer Transmissions, and they have a stage 3 build, which is a couple $1,000 and it will hold a lot of power. So we'll really see what I end up doing. I'm not sure yet, but that is something that will definitely have to go. And then the last thing that I want to do with this car is huge. So there's an event called Rocky Mountain Race Week that's out in the Colorado kind of area, tri-state area, I guess you can say. And it's a drag race event where you actually have to drive the car from event to event rather than trailering it, which is the common way to do it in drag racing. So it's super raw, super pure. You build a badass drag race car that can drive on the street, and you drive it from event to event and drag race it on prep surfaces. And I think that just seems like such a fun experience. A bunch of cool people like Cletus and other car YouTubers go on that, and it just looks like a rad time. And a lot of stick shift cars in that too, a lot of street cars, and I just think that would be so fun. And so a lot of you guys are probably here from my other channel, The Lost Co. That is a business that I own. We're a mountain bike shop. And that business is my absolute priority. And it takes up a lot of time, but I really want to somehow figure out how I can sneak away from the shop for probably a month or two. It would probably take some time, and go on that trip and actually put a sea-sucker rack on this drag Mustang, and then drive it from event to event, and in between the drag race trips, actually go riding mountain bikes, and then record that, put the mountain biking videos on the Lost Co's YouTube, and then put the driving videos actually on this channel. So who knows if that will happen, but that is the goal, and we'll see if we can get there. I'm trying really hard, but I would be so happy if that could happen. I'm sure that I would have so many fun stories that would happen on that trip that I think it would be worth a lifetime. All right, so we've pretty much only talked about the good things about this car, but there are a couple issues with that, but we're gonna save that for the next video. So the next video, we're gonna actually look at the little issues that's going on with this. They're not huge, they're not gonna be super expensive to fix or anything like that, but they're gonna take some time and some brain power. So it might be fun to join along with me, and in order to join along with me, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that bell notification so that you actually know when I post more videos. If you like this video, please hit like, it really helps me out, especially getting this new channel started. I can take all the help that I can with the algorithm. All you gotta do, click like. If you guys have any thoughts or opinions on this car, please let me know in the comments below, or if you have any other actual opinions on this video, since this is a new channel, let me know in the comments. I want all the feedback that I can possibly get. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you later, and fix those issues. Have a good night. I'm gonna sing a little lullaby to the twins here.